all 3 mics?
Yeah, we need 4 mics.
I can only get 3 mics.
Okay, I'll have however many you have. I'll take them. Are they all switched on?
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
No, it is crazy. I'm not.
Right. We've got 3 microphones between us. So I'm going to put 2 on the table, on the chairs. And I'm going to give one to the Vice President, and then we shall share them. And perhaps we'll sit. We've only got 3 microphones, so when you finish, I'll take yours from you. Okay. You want to come and sit on the panel? Okay. Why don't you come sit on the panel, and then I'll invite. Let's share it. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Benelux EIB Pavilion. I think that you will need to put your headphones on if you want to listen to what's going on. We are now starting. Yes, maybe you will need that. I think I'm okay. So we're kicking off a discussion now called Empowering SMEs, New Instruments to Unveil Energy Efficiency for Growth. So once you're all seated, we will begin. I think that among the best discussions that I've seen here at COP so far in the 2 days I've been here, not very long, is where we're presenting solutions. And solutions is what this discussion is all about. Have a go at that. We're just getting our headphones ready and in. I know, yeah, exactly. That should work, Bertrand. How about that? Yeah, good? Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, so among the best panels that I've been listening to during this COP are ones where we're presenting a solution to a challenge, and maybe where that solution can actually prove to be really revolutionary in transforming what we can do about the climate challenge for why we're all here today. And this is, I think, the subject of this panel. In this case, what we're talking about is providing to SMEs energy efficiency and decarbonization solutions, and unveiling new instruments which our partners here from the European Commission, from Solar Impulse Foundation and the European Investment Bank have been working on today. And we're going to listen to them, hear a bit more about what those solutions are, how they relate to the wider challenge. But before we do, I'm going to invite the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, Ambroise Fayolle, who is in charge of climate action at the EIB and has very much been the driving force behind the transformation of the bank into the climate bank. So Ambroise, please set the scene for us a little bit.
I'll be quick.
And tell us why it matters. You don't need to be too quick.
Thank you so much, Shirin, and thanks for being here. Many thanks to you, Dieter, and Bertrand, and Elina to be here this morning. It is often said that policymakers face an energy trilemma with regard to energy policies, striking a balance between energy security, competitiveness, and sustainability, and that you have to make choices, because some choices increase energy security, but they are not competitive and clean, or vice versa. A trade-off exists in every policy choice, with one exception, which is energy efficiency. Energy efficiency ticks all the boxes. It increases energy security, competitiveness, and sustainability at the same time. Indeed, as is often said, the safest way to energy is the energy that is not consumed. In addition, the deployment of innovative technologies and new business models for energy efficiency investments by supporting EU companies to be leaders in their fields, originate long-term business opportunities and contribute to a more sustainable growth. The EU has agreed on an ambitious energy efficiency target of reducing final energy consumption by at least 11.7% compared to the projection of the expected energy use for 2030. And actually what we have is EU countries have targets that are energy saving rates that are double the situation from 24 to 30. In parallel, at COP28, the EU had a global pledge to double energy efficiency measures by 2030. At EIB, we have also started to increase significantly our energy efficiency lending. In 2023, the bank provided more than 8.3 billion euros for energy efficiency projects, an all-time record, almost 8 times higher than the volume that we had only 1 decade ago. That being said, and despite this, the work is not yet done. And in the EIB strategic roadmap that was approved by our governors last year, under the first policy priority on climate, we have announced a new SME energy efficiency initiative to scale up existing technologies, generating material energy efficiency savings, contributing to the resilience and competitiveness of the EU SMEs. While major industry tends to be close to energy efficient, this is not the case for SMEs collectively. And it remains one of the largest untapped markets for energy efficiency. Today, we are unveiling the first pilot projects under the initiative, the result of a joint origination and structuring effort over the last months between EIB, Solar Impulse Foundation, and the European Commission, an innovation that proposition based on servitization models. I have here to thank those who have worked on this very, very hard to convince everybody in our houses that this is a great initiative. And I think at EIB to Marta, Adalisa, and also Isidoro. At the Commission, your team has been great in supporting us. And Bertrand, thanks to Jean and the team who has worked on this. Servitization models, which consist in providing energy efficiency as a service instead of as a product, are deemed to have a large potential for replicability, which is important for us, and the scale-up of existing technologies, generating material energy efficiency savings and leading to productivity gains throughout the European SME landscape. So I'll stop there, but basically what we are trying to do is something that an initiative that is good for climate, good for energy efficiency, good for growth, and good for competitiveness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President. So let's hear a bit more about why this could be such a transformative approach, in fact. And let me also introduce you all properly now. So we've got Dieter Juul-Jurgensen, who heads the European Commission's Energy Directorate as the Director General. Lovely to see you here. And Bertrand Piccard, who is the founder of the Solar Impulse Foundation, a friend and partner of the EIB, and excited to hear about this new venture from you. We've talked over the years about solutions. You're in the business of solutions. So we're going to hear a bit more. And we also have the Deputy Director General of Operations at the European Investment Bank, Elina Reuner. So great to see you as well. Let me start with you, Michel, if I may. Bertrand, sorry. Bertrand, there's been quite a bit about energy efficiency at this COP, the last COP. Also, it seems very much to have risen to the agenda, which is a very good thing, with the global pledge last year as well. But you've been working on this for a little while. So tell us what the journey has been at the Solar Impulse Foundation for you to get us to this point today, where we're unveiling some new solutions potentially.
We walk on two legs, and we should address energy issues with two legs also. One is renewable energy, and we know that it has now become economically profitable and cheaper than gas, oil, and coal. The second one is energy efficiency. That means not only try to produce more, but try to consume less.
Yeah.
And this is the other leg that is sometimes underestimated, and I think there's a number that people should understand. The energy waste in the world costs $4.6 trillion every year. So each time you save energy, you save money. And we see it with all the solutions that the Solar Impulse Foundation has identified and labeled. These solutions exist. They're allowed to save energy, save resources, they're allowed to make money. But each time we speak to the innovators and sometimes also to the big companies who are providing them, we see that there is a very clear obstacle. The obstacle is the investment to implement these solutions. Because you have sometimes a high capex, high investment, although during the total time of ownership, you are much cheaper. So at the end, after 10 years, it's of course worth it. But some solutions are blocked because SMEs cannot afford it. For example, the first idea of this initiative came in my mind when I was talking to Ecotech Ceram, a company that helps to reabsorb the lost heat from the chimney of factories. And they told me it works. It's much cheaper for the company. They save 20 to 40% in their energy bill, but they don't want to invest at first. And I was thinking, we should help these upfront investments with servitization in order to have the company pay just for the outcome and not for the ownership of this system. And that's when we met last year with Ambroise Fayol, and I was saying we need this initiative, this new financial tool. It doesn't exist enough, and if we do it together, we will push the solutions that are efficient, we will support the SMEs to be much more profitable, we will work on climate change, but we will also provide an investment tool to other people who can join us. And after 1 year, I have to pull my hat to the European Investment Bank, to the European Commission, thanks to DT, because we have now an initiative to announce, and not just an idea that was between us.
And it does feel like the time for this idea has come. I mean, there is a real buzz here at the COP, actually, around the energy efficiency. Maybe finally, because it seems to me that one of the obstacles has also been a lack of understanding about how important it is. It's almost too simple for people to kind of really believe that it's going to work. But let's go back to that in a minute. You used the word servitization. Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, what does that mean, Bertrand? Tell us in simple terms what we mean by that.
Servitization means that the user of the solution is not the owner of the solution. The owner can remain the solution provider. It can be an investment fund. It can be an investment service, allowing the client to use the solution and pay for the outcome and not for the ownership. Mm-hmm. Which means that if you have a lower OPEX, you save a lot of money.
Yes.
And you receive the solution that allows you to become efficient without being the one who has to invest. And what's the result? The result is that it allows us to sell kilometers, to sell calories, instead of selling an electric bus or a heat pump, to sell the reabsorption of the lost heat from a chimney without needing for the factory to buy the system. And what does it mean? It means that we can shift from a quantitative economy where the goal is to sell more and more to a qualitative economy where the goal is to sell quality, something that will last for longer. Mm-hmm. Because if you have the provider of solution who is positioning his solution in a factory, his goal is to have his system, his solution, last as long as possible. So it's the end of the artificial obsolescence. it's the end of selling more. It's the beginning of selling better quality. And you have in this triangle the company who provides the solution who will grow and bloom, the company who uses the solution who will be much more profitable, and this is the goal of the EIB, to have SMEs who are growing.
Yes.
And you have the financial investment system or the financial tool who has a profitability.
Let me talk about that with Elina for a minute then. The investors, that part of the equation, the kind of middle bit. How do you persuade them, or do they need persuading, that this is an asset class which is worth getting into, that it's attractive? How do you bring the private sector? This seems to be the kind of, the golden thing these days, to get the private sector in.
Thank you. That's really a quite important question here. And let me take first a step back and highlight a bit the big picture. So talking about the investment and the importance of this asset class. First, 12% of the investment in the EU currently goes to energy efficiency. It is not a negligible number, but it's still rather small number considering what the targets are. So, secondly, our climate survey that we did recently actually shows that the large companies are investing. They are making energy efficiency investments, but the smaller firms are still lagging behind. Only 40% of the SMEs, or just below 40%, are actually taking action in energy efficiency. Mm-hmm. And then thirdly, I would say that when you talk to the companies, it's knowledge is key. Understanding the technologies and the capacities, what to invest in, if you will. It's also about data. Just to case in point, companies that have done energy audits are more likely to invest to energy efficiency than those that are not. And again, SMEs are not. Only, I think, 1/3 of the SMEs have actually done energy efficiency audits. So that's sort of the investment landscape that we are talking about. And here, in conclusion, I think energy efficiency investments are picking up. Investors are becoming more and more interested. Mm-hmm. These investments are pushed by the regulation, but also, as the Vice President mentioned, they make a contribution to the competitiveness of the companies. But indeed, the large companies, large industries, energy-intensive industries are leading the way. SMEs are lagging behind. And there, I would sort of say that capacity, knowledge of the technologies, they are barriers, but financing is also identified as a key barrier, especially when it comes to smaller firms. And there, I think the initiative that we are launching here, alongside with the more traditional instruments, is really to try to scale up, crowd in more investors, including patient capital from those that invest in the fund industry, and combining the public and private together with the technical know-how. We believe that this could be a catalytic instrument that can be replicated going forward, and therefore make the energy efficiency investments in the SME sector in particular more appealing to the larger universe of investors.
Because as the Vice President mentioned, I mean, there is of course a priority now with the EIB. It's stated in the new strategic roadmap of the new president to push this very much through an SME energy efficiency initiative. So what more, just briefly, and then I want to go to Dieter, but what more can the EIB do you think, to encourage the uptake of these kind of investments?
In EIB, we want to do more what we are already doing. We are working really closely with the financial industry, banks and leasing companies, providing both financing as well as risk-sharing capacity. I think that's a very important point. It's not only about liquidity, it's also about risk and risk-taking capacity. So we are doing that. We are also working to boost the capital markets to engage with the energy efficiency through green securitizations. And then looping back what I said before, we are looking into developing these kind of innovative new instruments that bring together various interests, public, private, and philanthropy, to expand that accessibility and availability of financing for the SMEs.
So, I mean, and obviously part of that is working closely with the European Commission, where we see that where we do have joint instruments, whether it's InvestEU or instruments after the pandemic, you know, these things really work well. So tell us a bit, Dieter, about how that could work. And but maybe before that, you know, just again to go back to the broader picture, we've been saying how important these investments are. Why do you think we haven't made more progress here? What's holding things back?
Thank you very much. And thank you very much both to Bertrand for all the work in this. You were the one who brought this idea and said there is a gap. There's something we can do together. Thank you very much to you, Ambroise, and colleagues at the European Investment Bank for making this initiative a reality. We've had a really, really close cooperation, and I can promise you we will continue our engagement, our commitment, our cooperation to not just launch it, but really to make it happen and to make it impactful, because that's what matters. Fully agree with you, Bertrand, that we need to look at the energy transition. We need to remember it needs two legs. We add renewables, we scale up renewables significantly, tripling by 2030, and we need to double energy efficiency improvements by 2030. Why is that so important? If we don't do both, we're going to add renewables on top of fossil and keep the fossil we have. What we need to do is to get rid of the fossil, so the renewables replace the fossil and we lower our overall demand. It is critical for us to come back on track to the Paris target of not going beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius. We're not on the right path now, so we need to do more. Specifically on energy efficiency, we have the commitment from last year, which was great, finally putting energy efficiency and energy at the center of the climate agenda, because that's where we can make a real change, and where we can make a real change also in a way that is cost efficient. It's effective, it makes sense. But what we've seen over the last year, since that commitment was taken, is rather than doubling the rate, we have halved it. So we're going the wrong way. And that needs to change now. And that's another reason that this initiative is extremely important, to try to look at, as you say, what are the obstacles, what are the barriers, and how do we remove the obstacles? How do we get them out of the way? And one of the things we see is, as you have said, for large companies that have the equity, they have the capital, they can make that fairly capital, high capex investment into energy efficiency measures. They are able to do that. For small and medium-sized enterprises, this is a lot more difficult. They don't have the capital themselves, so they need to go to financial markets. And that is where the initiative helps to get that investment, to get that financing going. I think in addition to that, we need to look at working with the financial sector to educate the financial sector to have a good understanding of these investments. I think there is often an over-appreciation and an overstatement of the risk.
Yes.
There is no risk in lending money to a sound company, if it's a well-functioning company, and you help finance making that company even stronger by lowering the energy bill, then that is not a high-risk endeavor.
And yet it is
not a high-risk
as
financing,
such, isn't it?
Exactly. So I think we need to work with the financial sector to create a better understanding of risk, a more precise risk rating. If we have a more precise risk rating, if we have a better understanding of the low risks of energy efficiency investments, we can also help lower the cost of that capital. And that means that this initiative can make more mileage and bring even better results. So I think that working with the financial sector, educating the financial sector to have a much more precise, recognizing the risk, but a precise assessment and rating of the risk to lower the cost of capital. So I think that will be one of the next steps, also linked to this initiative.
Absolutely.
And where there is a risk, because there will still be risks, then that risk we need to look at how to best use,
Exactly.
how can public funds
And
help?
I was going to ask you about that.
Yes.
And then let's go to Bertrand a little bit, because it's a very interesting point about perceived risk, and it may sound a bit technical, but it's fundamental to getting these things off the ground. But to what extent, for example, could guarantees under, for example, InvestEU help to kind of tackle that often perceived risk by investors?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question, because indeed there is, of course, risks, and there is a need for the public sector to step in with guarantees. What we try to do with InvestEU is to leverage private investment, private capital. It's not a public funding. It's trying to make the best use possible of what is limited public budgets, so as to get the private investments going. And I think in doing that, we need to go through all the different aspects of guarantees. You've got a regulatory sort of guarantee. If we say clearly you need to achieve this target, you need to lower your energy demand, you need to lower your emissions, then there's a clear pathway, there's an obligation for companies, and that also means that they know this investment has to be made, and that will decrease the risk. Similarly, the risk assessment, the risk rating. So there are a number of things we can do from a regulatory perspective in terms of the programming, the regulation, how we operate, how the financial sector operates, so that they make available capital for energy efficiency investments. But there will still be a risk. So when you have lowered that as much as possible through other instruments, that's when the financial instruments, the InvestEU, comes in. Because we only want to use that public money. We don't want it to crowd out private investment. We want it to crowd in private investment, again, to make best use of taxpayers' money. And there, InvestEU is one of the key instruments. We've got other instruments, technical assistance, local initiatives. So really a lot happening in the energy efficiency field, in the energy efficiency financing coalition set up within the European Union. So we continue to be committed to that and to listen to the good ideas of Bertrand in trying to make it happen.
And Bertrand, I mean, obviously you think this is a good idea because it's come from you, and you've worked on it hard. But where do you see the challenges now in terms of getting this off the ground? Today we're announcing essentially the sort of pilots. We've got some way to go. What do you, and also if I can ask you a sort of a double question in a sense, where do you see the value of the partnership with the European Commission and the EIB on this as well?
The value of the partnership with EIB and the European Commission is huge, because it shows that the idea is credible.
Yeah.
And that it's more than an idea. It's a reality that can happen. So I value enormously this triangle partnership. Now, let's make it concrete, very concrete. What are we doing basically? It's much more than investment in efficiency. It is breaking the vicious circle of inertia, of status quo. Because today you have solution providers who want to sell their solutions to SMEs, and they say, it's profitable, you should invest. And the SME says, okay, maybe, but we don't know how much profitable it is. We don't know if it's reliable. We don't have the money. We will do it, but later. And we have the status quo that prevents us from reaching the goals of the Paris Agreement. What do we tell now? We tell that the solution provider can come to a client and say, we give you the system for free. We install it. We install it. We give you the electric mobility for your logistical company. We give you the thing that recovers the heat from the chimney. We give you the heat pump with the geothermal well for free. And we do it because we know it's profitable.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you will be able to pay back to the investor thanks to the profitability of the efficiency. If you save 40% in your energy bill, you can put 20% of it to the investor. Mm-hmm. So instead of having a dialogue between a seller and a buyer, you have a triangle where the investor comes, or the financial instrument comes in a way or another to facilitate the transaction and to allow something to happen in a situation where it would have never happened otherwise.
Yes.
So it's not just a facilitator, it's a catalyzer. You know, in a chemical reaction, if you have no catalyzer, you have no chemical reaction. And here we have the catalyzer for a financial system that can be extended everywhere. It can be extended to private individuals, can be extended to public sectors, to big companies, to small companies. There is no limit.
Yes.
And maybe this is one of the obstacles. It is so beautiful, it has no limit, it can bring in so many people that sometimes you will have people who say, wow, that's too beautiful to be true.
Well, exactly.
But it is
exactly.
true and
Where's
it works.
the catch? Where's the catch, Bertrand? I mean, there must be something.
The catch is the human fear to do something new.
Yeah.
And this is why you need to put together pioneers who love the unknown with doers and credibility, and all together we can make it happen.
Yeah.
And can you imagine when we'll come in one of the next COP, hopefully the next one, with a financial instrument completely ready, with already institutional investors, other banks, private investors, family offices that bring billions in it? Can you imagine the power that we will have? It's not anymore the COP thinking, oh, it's time for action. We'll say, we act. We're doing it.
Yeah.
We have the tool. Everybody can benefit from it. And it's the beauty, but it's the limit because of the fear that some people might have to do something completely new.
I mean, Elena, the European Investment Bank used to have a reputation for not being the fastest on the block, but maybe that's changed, actually. To what extent are you I mean, you may not be as confident as Bertrand, but are you quite confident that this can be a solution that could be, got off the ground by the EIB, but then actually scaled up in the kind of way that we're talking about? Because actually, for all its simplicity, it's quite radical as well, I think.
Well, let me start to take a bit of a step back and say, you know, we have been kind of trailblazer in the energy efficiency market. If you look at our numbers, over 8 billion euros of our funding went to energy efficiency last year. That is massive increase from what it was a decade ago. Yeah. Okay, and we will continue sort of on the beaten track, if you will. We will continue working closely with financial institutions, providing that liquidity, but also the risk-sharing capacity. For example, the EIF, Sustainability Guarantee under InvestEU, very important instrument.
Yes.
So we will continue on that, but it is, and I would like to here secondly mention that it's also about that capacity building. And here again, partners are crucial for us. Again, with the Commission, we are providing capacity building, helping the banking industry, but also the SMEs to overcome that human fear to invest in energy efficiency. So we have very successful programs in capacity building, technical assistance in this area. And then finally, while we are continue doing more what we already know, we want to indeed push the envelope, and I think this initiative is one of them. And there are 3 points. First of all, the initiative is there to crowd in those investors that are not yet in the energy efficiency space. Yeah. So working together with the fund industry and hopefully bringing in investors such as pension funds or insurance companies that currently have maybe not vehicles to invest in energy efficiency, in particular when it comes to SMEs or smaller ventures. Then I think it's a very interesting way of combining resources across the silos, everybody working on their comparative advantage. So it's the risk-sharing capacity that that the Commission is rendering, EIB leveraging those scarce public resources, and Solar Impulse Foundation in a way bringing that technical capacity building element and knowledge into the mix. Mm-hmm. And then finally, what I would like to pick on what was mentioned about about the SMEs, the barriers for SMEs to finance. So talking about the 3 A's: availability, accessibility, and affordability. Okay, and I would like to focus on, we have spoken about accessibility and availability, but the affordability, which is really interesting point, is that the CapEx investments might be sort of daunting for SMEs. It's a big upfront investments. There are still the perception of risk. Is this investment going to yield the results that I'm expecting? Is it going to really help me to be competitive? And maybe those considerations are holding you back. With this model, as we are addressing also companies and entities that are providing the energy efficiency as a service, we are moving away from supporting CapEx investments with financing to supporting OpEx, meaning that the companies don't need to do the upfront CapEx investment, but they can actually address the energy efficiency needs through the OpEx, which might actually lower significantly the barrier to do that, make that leap of faith, and in a way take away that human fear to
Absolutely.
invest.
And a final question for you, Dieter, before I invite Vice President to wrap up for us. I mean, I think listening to this, it very much does resonate, doesn't it, with the current, if I can use the word climate, but politically in Europe, where, we have to call a spade a spade. There is something of a backlash against some of the measures, the general sort of messaging around green and climate. And this really addresses the issue of competitiveness as well as climate. That's hugely important for public acceptability, political stability, acceptability. Is this one of the reasons you like the idea, Dieter? I mean, and do you see this as something that can not only tackle climate and energy efficiency, but also put European SMEs in a better place for competitiveness?
I think that's a very, very good way of framing it indeed. And if I may come back to what was said at the beginning of in your opening remarks, that there's often reference to this notion of a trilemma. There is no trilemma.
Yes.
There are so many things we can do that will help our competitiveness, our security, and the climate. So it really is up to us to design the best possible, as policymakers, the best possible framework for that, as the financial sector and the European Investment Bank, to try to make sure that the instruments are out there, and this is a good example. So yes, we do like this because it is a way of scaling up, of making possible, of enabling investments that are necessary. It's investments we have been envisaging, we have been regulating to make them possible to drive these investments, but there was something missing, and that was very well spotted. As you said, the shift from CapEx to OpEx for these companies makes it possible also for smaller companies. But I think we need to recognize that there's no genuine trilemma.
Yeah.
So arguing that there is a trilemma is a way that we risk slowing down investments and change. As you said, change is always difficult. There's a bit of you have to get used to whatever is new. But here there is actually a lot we can do that will benefit both the climate, our security, and our competitiveness. I think the challenge we're seeing, and that's where there is, if not a trilemma, at least a question of how to best do it, is the sequencing of all the different things that have to take place, and the fact that the benefits don't necessarily happen where the cost takes place. And so there are things that we need to work on. It's not so much the transition, it is the change that is happening, it is the impact of climate change that has a much, much, much more significant risk to our economy, to our security, to all of us than any energy transition will have. So the risk is in climate change, the opportunity is in the investments into the energy transition and access to energy.
Well, I think on that note, I mean, certainly for myself, listening to the three of you as problem solvers does reassure us that if it's going to happen, you guys are going to manage it. So we wish you all the best with that. And I think, as you said, Bertrand, next year in COP, let's have an update. Let's see how we've done. And I'm going to hand over to Vice President Fayol to see us on our way and maybe to give us a few insights after that.
Well, actually, I have nothing to add. I mean, the only thing I would add is first, what we see here, what we see in COPs is the value of partnerships. and this is a great partnership. This is new for us with Bertrand's foundation, and that's great. This is we are very used to the great work with Dieter's DG. So partnership. Now let's speed up the process of making things happen. And I hope that next year, when we meet again in Brazil, we'll be able to show not only that we have the first case of a fund or an intermediary playing the role that Bertrand was describing very well, but also that we have SMEs. We will be able to show how they benefit from these investments for the good of energy efficiency. So many thanks to all of you. Many thanks to the teams that have worked on this. Thanks to you, Shirin. And let's meet again next year.
Absolutely. Thank you, all of you. Thanks very much.